Second time, and I call the member for Hasluck.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to acknowledge the sentiments expressed by all previous speakers because their contribution to this debate is important, but it reflects their thinking across the breadth of issues that Australia has to consider. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to speak on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander People's Recognition Sunset Extension Bill of 2015. This bill will extend the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander People's Recognition Act for 3 years until the 28th of March 2018. Extending this bill was a recommendation of the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional Recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. The committee's progress report, tabled in both houses in October 2014, recommended that the bill be extended to align the proposed timing of a referendum to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Australian Constitution, which is an important element of the work that we have to do in this House. Former Minister for Indigenous Affairs, the Honourable Jenny Macklin, MP, first introduced this bill in 2012, describing it as an interim step towards recognition and a measure to assist in raising awareness and building a national consensus for constitutional change. Section 3 of the Act reads, "The Parliament, on behalf of the people of Australia," and that's on behalf of the people of Australia, recognises that the continent and islands now known as Australia were first occupied by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, a fact. The Parliament, on behalf of the people of Australia, acknowledges the continuing relationship of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples with their traditional land and waters. And the Parliament, on behalf of the people of Australia, acknowledges and respects the continuing cultures, languages and heritage of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Deputy Speaker, a piece of legislation cannot itself walk us down the road to all Australians recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as peers. Above all, this is a people's movement that has a growing public support and ownership, and it is critical in the success of the proposition. Extending the life of this bill is a demonstration of the support that the public calls for recognition has in both chambers. And I would concur with the former speaker that on this particular occasion that the debate needs to occur in both chambers of the Parliament. That if we are serious in the roles that we play in representing our constituents and the work that we do in representing the sectional components of our electorates, then every one of us has Indigenous populations within each of our electorates. And as we represent constituents, equally we should debate those things that are extremely important in the landmark life of this nation as it moves to a formal position of shared peership, shared recognition, but an acknowledgement that we have a shared history in this nation, and that the continuity of Indigenous people's relationship with this land is 40,000 years plus. And whether it's debated or not about the length of time, it doesn't matter. What is important is at the time of the writing of the Constitution, consideration wasn't given to the traditional owners of this continent, that they were excluded from the processes that charted the way for the development of the Australian birth certificate, our Constitution. It shows that the coalition, the Greens, the Labor Party and members of the crossbenchers that the committee has spoken to has committed to its privileged role in showing active national leadership on this issue. I'm also committed as chair of the Joint Select Committee, which is tasked with reporting to government on how the actual recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples takes form. Among the recommendations made by the committee so far is that Section 25 and 5126 be removed to remove references to race from the Constitution, and the committee has heard that these recommendations have overwhelming community support. It is the committee's strong view that any proposal must preserve both the existing Commonwealth laws relying on Section 5126 and the Commonwealth's powers to make laws with respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. But equally, it must contain a powerful statement of recognition, not a statement of symbolism. I think there are some landmarks, and Mr Jones referred earlier to the Redfern speech. I was there when that speech was delivered, and it was a powerful impact on the people who were in attendance, because for the first time what they heard was a recognition of the historical place of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this continent and in this country that we all love. And the apology, whilst some thought that it was a cynical process, it was a moment of healing. It brought together memories and painful memories of the past. It acknowledged that we had a history that was unsavoury in many senses, although there are our people who were in institutions who found that it saved them. But what occurred to individuals was problematic. And when Prime Minister Rudd delivered that apology, then you could see the impact that that had in the thinking of not only Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, but many Australians who sat with us on that day. And the influence that it had in their thinking that we have a joined past, that we have a joined future, and that the process of acknowledging a wrong had righted that unrecognised, often unspoken element that was in existence around not acknowledging the impact. But the sorry statement will remain as a landmark comment. It was interesting at a breakfast I went to recently where a senior Aboriginal woman, when the former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd spoke at a breakfast, just leant to me and said, "He's my hero. He recognised my pain. He helped me to acknowledge the past, but opened the opportunity for me to think of the future, to let go of the hurt and the bitterness that I had within me." And that was a powerful residual impact of an apology that happened some time ago. And if she, in that just quiet moment, uttered those words, and there are many others who have it, and the step towards recognition within the Constitution will be of a similar ilk, of where Australians and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people will say, this is us collectively, acknowledging that we are equal as peers, that we stand together and that we forge a future for the children who come after us. But we recognise the history, the tradition, and what was once a proud continent that has changed. And I'll echo Noel Pearson's comments in that he said that we have three parts to Australia. We have the history of which there were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Then we had the post-1788 period in which we developed a British heritage. But more so after the post-wars, we developed a heritage enriched with those who came from across the seas and waters, who contributed to the country and the society and the communities today that we have, that is a reflection of so many nations. The committee is conducting final hearings across the nation and will present a final report to Parliament in the coming months. I congratulate and thank the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of the Greens for the constructive and multi-partisan dialogue that they've been having on this very important issue. I acknowledge the Deputy Chair of the committee, Senator Nova Peris, Green spokesperson for Indigenous Affairs, Senator Rachel Siewert. I acknowledge the commitment of committee members and the opposition spokesperson for Indigenous Affairs, Shane Newman, MP, including our own Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Senator Nigel Scullion. I take this opportunity to thank the Honourable Christian Porter MP for his considerable legal contribution to the committee's progress report before his appointment as Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister this year. Mr Porter was replaced on the committee by Sarah Henderson, the member for Corangamite, and I look forward to benefiting from her considerable experience in the law and in public life, including media. Beyond this select committee, I urge all members and senators to learn about the proposals contained in the committee's progress report and to seek the view of their constituents about constitutional recognition. Contained within the committee's progress report is the recommendation that each House of Parliament set aside a full day, but in reflection on the comments made by Mr Jones, in order for all members to speak, and I believe that all members should on this historic opportunity and moment, is all of them should reflect the views of their constituents. They should reflect the views of all who live within it, and particularly those views that come from Indigenous people that live within their electorates. It is also a symbolism of the commitment of each and every member of both chambers in having a stance in respect to recognition, and those who oppose it, I'll respect their opposing view, but it is important that they all speak on the reasons for the importance of recognition and why we as a nation should ensure that the birth certificate of this nation includes the names of the two continuous living groups that have had a continuity of existence with this continent. If we have unanimous support within the Parliament, then we as political leaders will influence those that live within our electorates. I remain of the view that setting aside parliamentary time for debate would be a powerful democratic mechanism towards recognition, held alongside nationwide conventions to seek the views of all Australians, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. From a personal perspective, I enjoy being an equal to the peers in this Parliament. And it doesn't matter what our heritage is. What is important is the way in which we have respect and integrity for each other and the things that we believe in, what our heritage is, and the way that we contribute. Because it is through that relationship that we build a common recognition and a common respect. The completion of the Constitution will be an important point in the birth of this nation to the next stage of maturity that will place us well, not only within our own psyche as a nation and a nations of people, but within a global community. And I think that the work of the expert panel that commenced the process, of which I was a member, saw the richness of achieving recognition. But I would also hope that those things that cannot be recorded and etched into the birth certificate can be etched into a bill of recognition or an act of recognition that will encapsulate all of those things that are extremely important to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, that will remain within the construct of this Parliament, but will remain as a legislative instrument or act that shouldn't be changed or shouldn't be amended. And equally, the issue of prohibition of discrimination, I would hope that one day that the Racial Discrimination Act is never set aside. It's only ever been set aside for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. That in that Act maybe we should insert an amendment that requires an absolute majority of both chambers before any setting aside or amendment can occur, so that we protect the inherent rights of all Australians who face the prospect of discrimination. I'm looking forward to the time that I finish my term in this House and I can sit back and, with this proposal being recognised by all Australians, as with Mr Jones, being able to say that I served with an incredible group of people, that incredible group took us to a point in which we convinced the majority of states and the majority of Australians to accept formal recognition within the Constitution, and then relish on the fact that we were in a period that opened the opportunity to the completion of our birth certificate, but the enjoining of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as peers with all of those who live within this great nation. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.